We're about halfway down at the words Ela Mehacha, second word on the line, Ela Mehacha. A little more than halfway down on Kuf Mem Tes, that's 149b. Okay, so the Gemara is discussing a concept that the Gemara says that a person who brings about, he's an agent for punishment to be brought to someone else, that person is considered undesirable in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in front of Hashem. So if he causes punishment to be brought to another person, that itself makes him undesirable. So the Gemara is attempting to bring a proof to that. The Gemara had attempted to bring a proof to that from Navos, who brought about the punishment to Achav. The Gemara rejected that proof, and rather now the Gemara attempts to bring a proof from Tzidkiyahu. So the Gemara says, Ela Mehacha, perhaps the proof will be from here. Savata kalon mikavod, you have become satiated with humiliation rather than with honor. Shesei gamata v'hei orel, drink you yourself as well and become like those who are uncircumcised. So savata kalon mikavod ze Nebuchadnezzar. You have been satiated with humiliation. That is referring to Nebuchadnezzar. Shesei gamata v'hei orel, drink you yourself and become like the uncircumcised. That's Tzidkiyahu. That would be referring to Tzidkiyahu. And he brought about the humiliation of Nebuchadnezzar, as the Gemara is going to go through the story in a little bit. And therefore, says the Gemara, you see that Tzidkiyahu himself was considered to be now viewed like the uncircumcised because he brought about the punishment, the humiliation of Nebuchadnezzar. So the Gemara rejects this. The Gemara says, Chada, first of all, the Kulei Krab Nebuchadnezzar. The entire verse is referring to Nebuchadnezzar. It is not referring to Tzidkiyahu at all. So therefore, this proof is incorrect. Va'od, and furthermore, even if the entire concept has no logic, it doesn't make sense. Tzidkiyahu tzadika, Tzidkiyahu was righteous, and that incident which occurred to him was against his will, and it was out of his control, and therefore there was no way we would not view him as having brought it about because the entire incident occurred against his will. And the Gemara is going to go through what that incident was in a few moments. So the Amar Yehuda Amar Rav, and Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, that incident, B'shah Shebikesh Oso Russia, Lasos Laoso Tzadikach, and the Gemara is going to say, like, when this event happened, and the Gemara is going to elaborate on that in a few lines. Ela Mehacha, so the Gemara attempts to bring a new proof, and the Gemara says a new source for this idea. Gam Anosh L'Tzadik Lo Tov, bringing about punishment for another, causing punishment to another, even for a tzaddik, even for a righteous person to do so, lo tov, that is not good. And it says the Gemara, ein lo tov ela ra, and whenever the Torah says lo tov, if it says it is not good, then it means the reverse, it means the opposite, and it means that it is considered ra, it is considered evil. Uchsiv ki lo kel chafetz resha ata lo yigurcha ra, you are a God who does not desire evil, and evil will not reside next to you, amongst you, and therefore, tzaddik ata Hashem, you Hashem are righteous, lo yagur b'megur chara, anything which is considered evil will not be in your, will not be b'mechitzaso, will not be next to God. And therefore, says the Gemara, we see that anyone who brings about punishment will not be admitted into close confines with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with Hashem. Okay, so the Gemara now says, going back to what we had discussed earlier regarding the idea of casting lots. So the Gemara said that we referred to the idea of lots as from the word chalashim. So it says the Gemara, "My mashma the hai chalashim lishna de purahu." Where is the source to say that the words chalashim is referring to lots? So it says in one because the verse says, "Ech nafalta mishamayim, Hillel ben Shachar." how did you fall from the heavens, you who were as bright and as great as the morning star? Nigdata la'aretz, you were cut down to the earth. Cholesh al goyim, he who casts lots on the nations. And this is referring to Nebuchadnezzar, as the Gemara is going to elaborate. Amar Rabba bar Avuna, Malamed shahayamatil pur al gedole malchus. We learn out from here that Nebuchadnezzar used to cast lots over the kings of the nations. Leida Eza ben Yomo shel Mishkav Zachor, to determine whose day it was to service him with homosexual relations. And he did this as a way of showing his dominance over the other kings. And it says in the verse that each of the kings would reside in peace, which means when it was not their day, then they were able to reside in peace. Amar of Yochanan shenachu mimishkav zachor, that they were reprieved of having to service Nebuchadnezzar with homosexual relations. The Amar of Yochanan kol yamav shel osa Russia. During the lifetime of Nebuchadnezzar, of this evil person, lo nimsa sechok b'fi kol beria, there was not laughter and joy in the mouths of any living creature. Shenema nechei shaketa kol haaretz. When Nebuchadnezzar left, then the entire world was now peaceful, at rest. Patzchu rina, and now they can open their mouths with joy. Michlal da'ad hashta lo haverina. We see that until that point there was not joy amongst the creatures of this world. It is forbidden to stand in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar, even amongst the ruins of that palace, even once Nebuchadnezzar is no longer in existence. Shenema was Seirim Yiraktu Sham, and as it says that the demons will dance there. And Rashi explains that Hashem has decreed that forevermore demons will reside in the ruins of Nebuchadnezzar's palace, and therefore a person should not go there. Amar of Yehuda Amar Rav. And now the Gemara elaborates on what we mentioned earlier, that punishment was brought about to Nebuchadnezzar because of Chizkiyahu. And Rav says that occurred as follows: when this event occurred, Nebuchadnezzar cast lots and he chose Tzidkiyahu, and he attempted to sodomize Tzidkiyahu. So Nimshecha or Lasso Shalosh Meos Amma. So the Gemara says that his foreskin, his arla, was extended 300 amos, and therefore it became impossible for him to engage in relations. And it surrounded the entire festivities, the entire people who were there. And obviously this was humiliating to Nebuchadnezzar, and it says that you were satiated with humiliation rather than with honor. Drink from this cup of humiliation, and you will become like the uncircumcised. Begematria Shalosh Meos, the word Arel is Begematria 300. So the word Arel hints that his foreskin was extended 300 amos. Amar Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda Amar Rav says further, B'shashi Yarad Oso Russia leGehenim. When Nebuchadnezzar was descended, when he was taken down to Gehenim, Rashu Kol Yorde Gehenim. All the residents of Gehenim, those who now resided in Gehenim, trembled. Amru Shema Limshol Aleim Uba. Is it now intended that Nebuchadnezzar should take mastery? He should now be king over Gehenim? Oh, lecholos, or has he been cut down and weakened, kimosam, like us, and he is simply like everyone else in Gehenim who is there to accept his punishment? So, shenema gamatoch cholesa kamonu elenu nimshalta, that now Nebuchadnezzar, you have been weakened and you're no different than all the other residents of Gehenim. Yatzis abaskol. A heavenly voice came out. Va'amra mimina amta redei v'hishkaf v'hashkeva im es arelim. It says that from who will you surpass in beauty? And you will now reside amongst the uncircumcised. And Nebuchadnezzar was now condemned to reside in Gehenim. And the Gemara elaborates further when it regards the punishment. Eich shavas nuges shavsa madheva. How will it be that the oppressor, the conqueror, now will be stilled, and he who mined the gold will now be stilled from his activities? Amar Yehuda Amar Rav, Shavsa Umazu has been silenced. This nation, Sha'amra, going on to Kuf Nun, onto 150. Sha'amra Medod Vahave, measure and bring us presents, bring us gold to service us. Ve'ikad Amri Sha'amra Ma'od Hevi Below Mida. Others interpret as follows, that it said, this is the nation that said, bring more and more without even measuring, that you should continue to bring us tribute. V'rabu Yisera Hosaftali, V'ribo Yisera Hosaftali, and you have given me extra power. Again, referring to Nebuchadnezzar. Amar Yehuda Amar Yirmiyah Bar Abba. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav Yirmiyah Bar Abba, Malamed, what extra power was given to Nebuchadnezzar? Malamed Sherochav al Ari Zachar, he would ride upon a male lion, V'kashar Tanin Berosho, and he tied a serpent around his head, meaning that he was given mastery over the animals of the world, even wild animals that normally would attack a human being were subservient to him. V'kayim hashenemar, as the pasuk says, "V'gam es chayos hasodeh nosati lo la'avdo." Even the wild animals I have given to Nebuchadnezzar to service him. That he had mastery even over the wild animals. Okay, going on to the Mishnah now, on Kuf Nun 150 Amud Aleph. Lo yiskar adam poalim b'Shabbos, going back to what a person is permitted to do on Shabbos, and says the Mishnah, a person may not hire workers to service him, to perform malacha, and that means he's hiring the workers to perform malacha, to perform work during the weekday. Obviously, not to perform work for him on Shabbos, but the Gemara is saying that the Mishnah is saying that he's forbidden to go ahead and hire them on Shabbos because he's engaging in weekday activities. Furthermore, not only is he forbidden from hiring them himself, but he may not instruct another person to hire the workers for him. And the Gemara is going to elaborate on what the chidush of what the Mishnah is teaching me, because if he's forbidden to do it, obviously another Jewish person would be forbidden to do so as well. And therefore, what is the Mishnah teaching me by saying that he may not instruct another to do this for him? The other person would be forbidden from doing it on his own. So, ein machshichin ala tchum liskor lo poalim. Furthermore, not only is he forbidden from going ahead and hiring workers on Shabbos, but he's even further forbidden from preparing to do so on Motzoi Shabbos, for preparing on Shabbos to do so after Shabbos, and he's preparing to do so by walking to the end of his Techum. So there is a halacha of Techum Shabbos. A person is forbidden from walking, from traveling beyond a distance of 2,000 amos, beyond a distance of 2,000 amos, beyond from his place of residence on Shabbos. So if a person needs to travel further than that, and he wants to go to a place where there are workers available to hire them, so he might travel to the end of his 2,000 amos on Shabbos, and wait there for Shabbos to end, so that he should be prepared to immediately at the end of Shabbos go be close to where he needs to hire those workers. So even though there's nothing forbidden with what he has done, because he didn't travel beyond the Tchum, it is nevertheless, since he's preparing on Shabbos to do malacha after Shabbos, that too is forbidden. Aval ulahavi peros, or he may not travel to the end of the Tchum in order to be immediately prepared to harvest fruit after Shabbos. Since harvesting fruit is something which is forbidden to do on Shabbos, he may not prepare to do so on Shabbos for after Shabbos. Aval machshichu lishmor, however, he is permitted to travel to the edge of the Tchum in order to guard his fields The Gemara is going to explain that since guarding his fields is something which is not forbidden for him to do so on Shabbos, because it doesn't involve any malacha, he's simply going to be standing there. So therefore, he is permitted to walk to the end of Tchum to prepare to do so for after Shabbos. Umevi peiros biyado. Once he is there, he is permitted to bring back fruit that he harvests, even though preparing to harvest fruit is forbidden. Since here his primary intent is to guard his field, so he's permitted to bring back fruit afterwards. Amar Abba Shaul, so Abba Shaul says a general rule, Kol shani zakai ba'amiraso, anything which I am permitted to discuss on Shabbos, Rasha ani lahachshich alav, I am then permitted to prepare on Shabbos to do so after Shabbos. And the Gemara is going to explain what exactly Ben Azai is referring to, what case is Ben Azai referring to, and what halacha is he coming to teach us by generally, anytime a person says that kol shani zakai, anything which I am permitted, the word kol is coming to include something which was not originally taught in the Mishnah, and the Gemara is going to explain what it is that Ben Azai is coming to add. Okay, so the Gemara now, as we mentioned, the Gemara is going to question, what is the Mishnah coming to teach us by saying that he, not only is he forbidden from hiring workers himself, but he is forbidden from instructing someone else to hire workers for him. Says the Gemara, Pshita, this is obvious. Maishna hu umaishna chavero. If he is forbidden to do so, so then certainly he's forbidden from instructing another Jew to do so on Shabbos, because this Jew is forbidden to do so himself. And if he were to instruct him to do so, as Rashi explains, he is going to violate the halacha of lifnei iver, of causing another Jew to stumble to violate a sin in the Torah. So Amar Rav Papa. So Rav Papa says, attempts to explain the Mishnah, chaver nachri. Perhaps it's referring to a non-Jew. So we're saying that not only is the Jewish person forbidden from hiring the workers himself, but he is forbidden from instructing a non-Jew to hire workers for him. Maskifla Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi says this cannot be the explanation, because Amira lenachri shavus. We already learned that instructing a non-Jewish person to perform malacha, to do something which is forbidden for the Jew to do, is likewise forbidden. So the Mishnah cannot be coming to teach us this halacha because it's already been taught to us. Ella Amar Rav Ashi. So rather, Rav Ashi explains, Afilu tema chavero Yisraelhu. So says Rav Ashi that we can interpret the Mishnah to be referring to instructing another Jewish person to do this action for him, to hire the workers. And it's necessary for the Mishnah to teach us this halacha. Hakamash Malan, the Mishnah is coming to teach me, Lo yomar adam lachavero sechor li poalim. A person may not instruct another Jew to hire workers for him. That is what is forbidden. Only when he explicitly states that he is hiring, he is asking him or hiring him to hire other workers for him. Aval omer adam lachavero. However, so it's a limitation. That is what is forbidden. However, he is permitted to say to his friend, Hanire sheta'amod imi la'erev. Does it seem likely that you are going to be able to join me after Shabbos is over? Even though his intent is that he's asking him to come and perform malacha, that he is asking him to come and perform work for him after Shabbos, even though that is his intent, since he did not state it explicitly, then it is permitted for him to say these words to his friend on Shabbos, since he's not stating explicitly that he's asking him to do work for him after Shabbos. And whose opinion is the Mishnah following? Masnisin mani ki Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha. And this Mishnah is following the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha, as we'll see in the Brisa, the Tanya, as the Brisa states, Lo yomar adam lachavero, according to the opinion of the Tanakama, of the first Tana in the Brisa, a person is not permitted to say to his friend, Hanire sheta'amod imi la'erev, does it seem likely that you will be able to join me after Shabbos is over, when his intent is to ask that he means for the person to do work for him after Shabbos. However, Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha states that Omer Adam Lachavero, it is permitted for him to say to his friend, Hanire Sheta'amod imi la'erev, does it seem likely that you will be able to join me after Shabbos? And the Gemara is going to explain that why this is so. Amar Rabbi bar Chana states, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, halacha to Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha, the halacha follows Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha, and our Mishnah is following that opinion. Amar Rabbi bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi bar Chana explains in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, my taima de Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha. What is the reason behind Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha's opinion? Yichsiv, as the pasuk says, "Mimetzo chefzecha v'daber davar." This is a pasuk in the Navi that the Navi is saying that one should refrain on Shabbos. This is a pasuk in the Navi which states that a person should refrain on Shabbos from engaging in weekday activity. And it says from attending to your needs, v'daber davar, and discussing something which is forbidden on Shabbos. Dibur asur, hirur muter, and that is teaching us that it is only forbidden to explicitly discuss something. However, to have thoughts on Shabbos about doing malacha after Shabbos, that is permitted, since it is only thought; it is not actually explicitly stating it, and therefore, in our case as well, where the words that he states simply are, will you be able to join me after Shabbos? There's nothing forbidden about joining somebody after Shabbos, even though his intent is that he's asking him to do malacha for him. Since he's not stating it, it's merely the thoughts that are in his head, that is permitted. And that is the reasoning behind Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha, and the Mishnah is following his opinion. Now, says the Gemara, Alma, we see from here, that since we're saying that this is permitted to do because it is simply thoughts, then clearly we are stating that thoughts do not have the same status as words. Now, asks the Gemara, is this true? Rabbi bar Chana himself stated in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, in all places it is permitted for one to have thoughts of Torah learning, except for in a bathhouse and in a bathroom, and there it is forbidden for a person even to have thoughts of learning Torah. Now, therefore, we see that thought is considered on the same status as speech, because speech of Torah is forbidden in these places, and even thought is forbidden. Says the Gemara, Sha'ani Hasam, no, this halacha is different. Because the Torah states that which forbids us from discussing Torah and from thoughts of Torah is from the verse, your encampment shall be holy. And that is lacking in this case. Now Rashi explains that we learn out from the fact that the Torah says your encampment should be holy. What that is teaching me is that all places where Jews reside shall be holy and shall not be a place of filth or of where people go unclothed. And Rashi says, why is it that the Torah states that the encampment must be holy? Rashi explains very beautifully, because the Torah understands that Jews are constantly having thoughts of Torah, and therefore the Torah admonishes us that we have to always be in a place of holiness, because there will be because we will have thoughts of learning Torah. So we see from here that the Torah does not state that words of Torah must be in a place of holiness, but rather a Jew himself must be in places of holiness, and therefore even thought is forbidden in these places. Now, says the Gemara, however, Hachanami, the Gemara poses a further question, Hachanami ksiv v'lo yera'eh b'cha ervas davar. But it says you shall not have an occurrence of nakedness. And the Gemara now is interpreting the words davar, ervas davar, comes from the root of dibur, of speech. And therefore we should understand it to say that only speech is forbidden. Says the Gemara, note that this is incorrect. rather, the word davar is referring to an occurrence of nakedness. And it's teaching me the halacha of the opinion of Rabbi Huda. The Amar Rabbi Huda, akum arum asur likros kriya shema kenegdo. That if a person is in the presence of an unclothed, of a naked, non-Jewish person, it is forbidden for him to recite kriya shema across from him. Now says the Gemara, my irya akum. Afilu Yisrael Nami. Why are you teaching me this halacha regarding a non-Jew? This halacha is true regarding a Jewish person as well. Says the Gemara, you're correct. Lomi baya ka'amar. Rather, it's teaching me a chidush that when we said a non-Jewish person, what we mean to say is that certainly this halacha is true regarding a Jewish person, and rather it's teaching me that it even applies to a non-Jewish person. Why would I have thought otherwise? Since it says regarding the non-Jewish nations, asher besar chamorim besaram, that their flesh is like the flesh of a donkey. Ema shapir dami. I might have thought that just as a person is permitted to recite Kriyat Shema, recite Torah in the presence of animals that are obviously unclothed, perhaps that halacha should apply to non-Jews as well. Kamash malan. That therefore it's teaching me that no, since obviously they are human beings, the halacha applies to their nakedness as well. Says the Gemara, perhaps it's true. Perhaps the Torah is excluding them, that a person is not forbidden. A person would be permitted to recite Kriyat Shema in their presence. Says the Gemara, Amar Kra ve'ervas avihem lo ra'u. So says the Gemara, since in regard to the story of the Bnei Noach, of the children of Noach, where Cham uncovered his father's nakedness and Shem and Yefes went in with their backs to him, and the Torah states, "Ve'ervas avihem lo ra'u," they did not see the nakedness of their father. So you see that even though Noach, who had the status of a non-Jewish person, because this was before the Jewish nation was created, still the Torah refers to it as nakedness, uses the word erva, and therefore you see that the status of nakedness refers to non-Jews as well. Okay. Now says the Gemara, "V'dibur mi asir." Is it true? So the Gemara is questioning this, that we stated that speech related to anything which is forbidden to do on Shabbos is forbidden. Even speech regarding such things is forbidden on Shabbos. Is that in fact true? The Gemara is going to question this. Rav Chizda v'Rav Hamnuna the Amri Tarvayu. Rav Chizda and Rav Hamnuna both stated as follows: Cheshbonos shel mitzvah muter lechashbein b'Shabbos. Calculations of mitzvah, calculations involved in performing mitzvos are permitted to be calculated on Shabbos. One is permitted to calculate how much tzedakah shall be distributed to poor people. He is permitted to make those calculations on Shabbos. Amar Rav Yaakov bar Idi, Amar Rav Yochanan. And Rav Yaakov bar Idi stated in the name of Rav Yochanan, Mefakchen pikuach nefesh or pikuach rabim b'Shabbos. One is permitted to be involved in the saving of lives on Shabbos, and this is obvious. But further, it stated v'holchin lebate knesios lefakeach al iske rabim b'Shabbos. It is permitted to travel around to the bate knesios, to the different shuls, in order to lefakech al iske rabim b'Shabbos, in order to be involved in matters which relate to the tzibur, and one is permitted to do this on Shabbos. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmeni, Amar Rav Yochanan, Rav Shmuel bar Nachmeni stated further in the name of Rav Yochanan, holchin letartios lekarkasos ulebasil kaos. One is permitted to travel to the stadiums, to the circuses, to the congresses, to the courthouses of the non-Jews, which normally would be forbidden lefakech al iske rabim, to be involved in matters related for the necessities of the tzibur. B'Shabbos, not only is he permitted to travel there, but to go to these places, but he's even permitted to do so on Shabbos. V'tana debei Menashe, and it was learned in the house of Menashe, Meshadchin al hatinokos le'aris b'Shabbos. One is permitted to be involved in a discussion to give a match, to create a match, a marriage between children on Shabbos. V'alatinok lelamdo sefer, and to hire a teacher to teach Torah to a child. Lelamdo umnus, and to calculate regarding teaching a trade to a child on Shabbos. So one is permitted to make all these calculations on Shabbos, even though they relate to things which are forbidden to do on Shabbos. And all of these are performing mitzvahs, as Rashi adds that it is a mitzvah for a person. The Gemara in Kiddushin says that it is a mitzvah for a person to teach a trade to his son, to his child, because he's giving him a way of supporting himself in dignity, and otherwise the child will turn to forbidden, to illegal activity. So answers the Gemara that there's no proof from here that speech is permitted regarding that which is forbidden on Shabbos. There's a different exception here. The reason why such speech is permitted is because the Torah says, from calculating, from being involved in your needs, and from there we learn out, asurim, it is only discussing a person's private needs which is forbidden. Shamayim mutarim, however, the needs of heaven, which refers to, which is saying anything which is involved in the calculation of a mitzvah, that is permitted. So therefore, what we're saying is speech is definitely forbidden on Shabbos, but that is only referring to speech regarding a person's private activities, which, regarding a person's private needs. However, anything which is involved in the calculation of performing a mitzvah, that is permitted for a person to discuss on Shabbos. Okay. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, cheshbonos shel malach v'shel ma bekach mutar l'chashbein b'Shabbos. So Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel that calculations which have no relevance, no significance, are permitted to be calculated on Shabbos. Tanya nami hachi, we learned similarly in a brisa, cheshbonos she'avru, calculations which are already in the past. They relate to matters which have already occurred. Vishe asidin lios, or calculations which relate to matters which are not occurring presently, but rather they will occur in the future. Asur lechashben. So they are forbidden to calculate on Shabbos, and the Gemara is going to explain what this means in a few lines. Shel malach, however, those which have no significance to this person, turning on to Kuf Nun Amud Beis, onto 150b, Vishal ma bekach, and those which have no significance, mutter lechoshban, it is permitted for a person to make these calculations on Shabbos. Now, poses the Gemara a contradiction to this. Uriminu, we have a contradiction. Choshvin cheshbonos she'enon tzrichin. One is permitted to make calculations which are not necessary. Ve'en machashvin cheshbonos she'tzrichin b'Shabbos. One is not permitted to make a calculation which is necessary, which is relevant to him on Shabbos. Kate said, what is an illustration of this? Omer Adam Lachaveru, a person is permitted to say to his friend, Kach v'kach poalim hotzeisi al sadazu. These so many workers, such and such is the amount of workers that I had to hire to work in this field. Kach v'kach dinrin hotzeisi al dirazu. This is the amount of money, the expenditures that I had involved in building this house. What this means is, since it already occurred, he's referring to what he had done in the past. That is permitted for him to say on Shabbos, even though it's a calculation of money. Avol lo yomar lo kach v'kach hotzeisi v'kach v'kach ani osid lahotzi. But he may not say to him, to his friend, this is the amount which I already expended, which I already spent, and this is the amount which I will spend in the future. Now, here it's a clear contradiction, because in the beginning of the brisa we're stating that it is permitted to discuss the past, and at the end of the brisa we're saying that it's forbidden to discuss the past. It says the Gemara, "Ulataimech kashya lecha higufa." The Gemara's question is, the Gemara is posing a contradiction to that which it states in the earlier brisa on Kuf Nun Amud Aleph on 150a, where the brisa stated that even calculations regarding the past are forbidden, and in this brisa it's stating calculations regarding the past are permitted. Says the Gemara, "V'letaimech kasha lachi gufa." Says the Gemara, if you're going to pose a question, the brisa itself is problematic, because at the beginning of the brisa it states that calculations regarding the past are permitted, and at the end of the brisa itself, in the very same brisa, it states calculations regarding the past are forbidden. So if you're going to pose a question, you can pose it regarding the brisa itself. Clearly, this brisa requires explanation, and whatever explanation we present regarding the brisa will suffice to explain the distinction between the two brisos as well. And that explanation is as follows: Ha de'ika agra da agira gabe, ha deleka agra da agira gabe. So the explanation that we're going to offer is that one is referring to a case where that which is forbidden is referring to a case where he still owes money to those workers whom he hired. So even though the work has been completed, the calculation itself is still relevant, because he is mentioning how much money he is going to be required to, he is obligated to pay these workers, which is obviously still relevant to him. So since the calculation is relevant, it is forbidden. The case which is permitted is when he has already paid off all his debts, and therefore the calculation has absolutely no immediate relevance in the present, and therefore it is permitted to discuss on Shabbos. Okay. At the two dots, the Gemara is going back to explain the Mishnah, where the Mishnah had stated that anything which is forbidden to do on Shabbos, it is forbidden to prepare on Shabbos to do this action after Shabbos. And the preparation which the Mishnah was referring to is for a person to travel to the very end of his tchum, to the boundary of his tchum, the 2,000 amos, in order to be immediately prepared to continue on his travels after Shabbos. Tanu Rabbanan, so the Gemara now teaches us a story about an individual, a righteous person, relating to making plans on Shabbos to do something after Shabbos. So Chassid Echad, there was a righteous person, and whenever it refers to a Chassid, it means a person who goes above and beyond the immediate requirements of halacha. So as we'll see in the story, he noticed on Shabbos that there was a breach in the wall surrounding his field. And on Shabbos, he immediately made plans to go ahead and fix up this breach, to close up this breach. And then he immediately realized that it is Shabbos. And he had made these plans in his head to fix up the wall on Shabbos. Now, even though we stated clearly earlier that making plans in a person's head without stating it explicitly is permitted, nevertheless, this person, v'nimna oso chassid v'lo gadra, he went above and beyond that which is required in halacha, and he decided that since he had made the plans on Shabbos, he was going to refrain from fixing this breach in the wall even after Shabbos. And says the Gemara, he was rewarded for this. V'nasa lo nes, a miracle was performed for him, but also both tzlaf, and a tzlaf tree then grew in his field. Umimena hoisa parnasasa u parnasas anshe beso. It was so fruitful that it now sufficed for him to earn a living, not only for him, but for all the members of his household to be supported from this tzlaf tree. So this was his reward for going above and beyond the requirements of halacha. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Rav Yehuda stated in the name of Shmuel, Mutar la'adam lomar lechavero. A person is permitted to say to his friend, lekrach ploni ani holech lamachar, to this and this city I will be traveling tomorrow. So even though he's stating on Shabbos that he's going to travel, that is permitted to mention. Why is that so? Because if there would be huts along the way, which means that if there are houses, then within, Rashi explains, within 70 amos, within approximately anywhere between 100 to 140 feet along the way, then the tchum is extended, because the halacha of tchum Shabbos only goes into effect at the very outskirts of a city, meaning that within the area which people live, within the inhabited area of a city, a person is permitted to walk anywhere in the city. There's no limitation of 2,000 amos. The 2,000 amos only goes into effect beyond the outskirts of the city. And therefore, the halacha would be that if there are huts, there are houses within 70 amos, then that is considered to be an extension of the city, and a person is permitted to travel without any limitations on the distance whatsoever. Now, therefore, since it would be possible, theoretically, for a person to travel to a distant city on Shabbos, if there would be huts which extend the outskirts, the boundaries of this city where he resides, therefore it is permitted for him to say on Shabbos that he's going to be traveling, even though in his situation there are no such huts, and for him it is forbidden. Since theoretically it could be permitted on Shabbos, it is permitted for him to discuss that action, that traveling on Shabbos, because it is not explicitly stating something which is forbidden on Shabbos, since theoretically it could be something which is permitted. Now, says the Gemara Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Ein machshichin ala tichum liskor poalim ulahavi peiros. It is forbidden for a person to walk to the end of his tchum in order to be prepared to hire workers, ulahavi peiros, and to bring fruit. Now, says the Gemara, Bishlema liskor poalim de b'Shabbos lo motzi agar. Now, we can understand, it's logical why it's forbidden for him to prepare in order to hire workers, because hiring workers is something which is forbidden on Shabbos. Alalahavi peiros lema shem yesham mechitzos mevi. However, regarding bringing in fruits, which the Gemara understands now simply to mean to carry those fruits. Now, if there would be walls, meaning an eruv, surrounding this area, maybe it would be permitted for him to do on Shabbos. Now, since this is something which theoretically could be permitted on Shabbos, the Gemara asks, now why is it forbidden from preparing to do so after Shabbos, since this is something which theoretically should be permitted? Answers the Gemara, Mishkachas la bepeiros hamechubarim. So we can explain the Mishnah to be referring to fruits which are still attached to the ground, and when it says to bring fruits, it means to harvest those fruits, to pick those fruit. And since that is something which is unequivocally forbidden to do on Shabbos, it's forbidden to prepare on Shabbos to do so after Shabbos. Now, asks the Gemara of Hatani Rav Oshia. However, this explanation will not suffice, because Rav Oshia taught in Machshichin ala Tchum, one is forbidden to travel to the end of Tchum lahavi teven v'kash, in order to prepare to bring in hay and dried out stalks of wheat. Bishle makash mishkachas la b'mechubar. Now we can understand that stalks of wheat, dried up stalks of wheat, can still be referring to stalks which are attached to the ground. Ela teven, but if it's referring to hay, heichi mishkachas la. However, if it's referring to hay, what explanation can we give? Betivna saria, that it's referring to stalks to hay, which is muktzah on Shabbos. And Rashi explains, since it's muktzah, even if there were to be mechitzos, even if there were to be walls, it would be forbidden from transporting it, from moving it on Shabbos, and therefore it's forbidden to prepare on Shabbos to do so after Shabbos. Tashma machshichin ala tchum lefakeach al iskei kala v'al iskei hameis. Says the Gemara, it is permitted to travel to the end of a tchum, to the boundaries of his tchum, in order to be involved in, to be prepared, to be involved in matters in raising money or preparing to making preparations for a kala, to marry off a bride, v'al iske hameis, and to bury the dead. Now, al iske kala umeis in, al iske acher lo. And what this is teaching me is that it's permitted only to do so for a marrying off a bride or to bury the dead, but for other things, al iske acher, but for private matters, lo, it would be forbidden. Now, those private matters have to be similar to that which is permitted. In other words, that which is forbidden has to be referring to the very same actions which are permitted for the sake of a bride or for burying the dead. Now, bishlema acher dumya dekala mishkachas la lemigzele asa. So that can be referring to cutting down myrtle branches, which were used as a crown for the kala. And since that is something which is forbidden on Shabbos, so it's permitted regarding marrying off a bride, because that is a matter of mitzvah. As we learned earlier, one is permitted to prepare for a mitzvah on Shabbos. But certainly for private purposes, it would be forbidden. Ela meis ma'nihu. However, what is it that we're referring to preparing for burying the dead? Says the Gemara assumes lahavi lo aron v'tachrichem, that it's referring to bringing a coffin and bringing shrouds for him to be buried, and it's simply referring to transporting them. V'katani meis in aval acher lo. And it's saying that it's permitted to do so for the sake of burying the dead, because that is a matter of a mitzvah. However, other types of transport would be forbidden. So, now, why would transport of something be forbidden to prepare to do so on Shabbos for after Shabbos? This is something which would theoretically be permitted to do on Shabbos, because if there would be walls, meaning there would be an eruv that would permit the person to transport, it would be permitted on Shabbos. So since theoretically it's permitted, it should be permitted to prepare for that on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Meis nami mishkachas la lemigze la glima. That which we are talking about is, we're discussing a case where a person will be required to cut cloth to make the shrouds on Shabbos. That is something which is certainly forbidden on Shabbos. It's unequivocally forbidden. There's no case which that would be permitted, and therefore it's permitted for him to prepare on Shabbos to do so after Shabbos, because it's a matter of a mitzvah. But if it was for private matters, so preparing on Shabbos to cut cloth after Shabbos would certainly be forbidden, because this is something which there is no way that it would be permitted to do so on Shabbos. Okay, we will end here for today. We'll pick up with this tomorrow.